Jnanakosha, Puranas, Introduction.
सर्गच्च प्रतिसर्गच्च वंशो मन्वन्तराणि च वंशानुचरितं चैव पुराणं पञ्चलक्षणम्.
Matsya Purana. The Manvantras. Each Manvantara is an era and is ruled over by a Manu. One of Brahma's days is known as a Kalpa, and there are 14 Manvantras in every Kalpa. At the end of every Kalpa, the universe is destroyed and has to be created afresh. In the present Kalpa, 6 Manvantras have already passed, and the 7th Manvantara is now current. There will be 7 more Manvantras in the future before the universe and its inmates are destroyed. The gods, the 7 great sages, Saptarishis, and the individual who holds the title of Indra change from one Manvantara to another. The 14 eras of the present Kalpa are as follows. The first Manu was Swayambhu Manu. The gods then were the Yamas. Sarochisa was the second Manu. The gods were the Tushistas, and the names of the 7 great sages were the Toli, Chayavan, Stambha, Prana, Kasyapa, Pururva, and Brahaspati. The third Manu was Autama. The gods were named the Bhavanas and Karokrundi, Dhalbhaya, Shankha, Pravachana, Shiva, Sita, and Samhita were the Saptarishis. Tamas was the fourth Manu. The 7 great sages were Kavi, Prithu, Agni, Akapi, Kapi, Jalpa, and Dhimana, and the gods were known as the Sadhyas. The 5th Manvantara was ruled over by a Manu named Raivata. The gods were the Abhuta Rajas, and the 7 great sages were Devavahu, Suvahu, Prajna, Somapa, Munti, Hiranyaroma, and Saptaswaha. Chakshusu was the 6th Manu. The gods were known as the Lekhas, and the 7 great sages were Brigu, Sudama, Viraja, Shahishnu, Nada, Vishwavana, and Atinama. The 7th Manvantara is the one that is now current, and the name of the Manu is Vaivasvanta. The Saptarishis are Atri, Vasistha, Kashyapa, Gautama, Bharadwaja, Vishwamitra, and Jamadagni. The gods are the Sadhyas, the Vishwadevas, the Maruts, the Vasus, the 2 Ashwins, and the Adityas. The 8th Manu will be Savarani, and the 7 great sages of this era will be Aswathama, Sharadvana, Kaushika, Galava, Sthanananda, Kashyapa, and Rama. The 9th Manu will be Rauchya. Bhautya will be the 10th Manu. The 11th Manu will be named Merusva Savarani. Rita will be the 12th Manu. Ritadhama will be the 13th Manu. And the 14th and final Manu will be named Vishwasena. Prithu. A king named Anga was descended from Swayambhu Manu. Anga married Sunita, the daughter of Mrityu, and they had a son named Vena. Mrityu was an evil person. From his childhood, Vena associated with this maternal grandfather of his and thus came to acquire evil ways. When Vena became king after Anga, he started to oppress the world. He stopped all yajnas and the prayers to the gods. He insisted that people should pray only to Vena. The sages did their level best to persuade Vena to return to the righteous path, but Vena would not listen. The sages then killed Vena. Vena had no sons, and a kingdom does not flourish in the absence of a king. Therefore, when Vena was dead, the sages started to knead the dead body so that a son might be born. The first being that emerged as a result of this kneading was a dark and dwarfish sun. All the evil that was in Vena's body entered the body of this son, so that there was no more evil left in the dead body. When the kneading continued, a handsome son was born from Vena's right hand. He was born fully grown and held bows, arrows, and clubs in his hand when he emerged. His entire body was clad in shining armor. The word Prithu means great. Since the son was born after a great deal of effort, he was given the name Prithu. The sages made arrangements for Prithu's coronation. Prithu was a good king who ruled well, but Prithu's subjects still did not have the wherewithal to make a living. They asked their king to do something about this. Prithu decided that since the earth was not providing any food grain, he would kill the earth. The earth adopted the form of a cow and started to flee. Wherever the earth went, the king followed in hot pursuit. The earth finally realized that she could not escape by running away. She told Prithu, "Please do not kill me. Then your subjects will not even have a place to live in. Your object is to find a means of living for your subject. How will that be accomplished if you kill me? Milk me instead of killing me. The food grains that the milking will yield will provide the sustenance for your subject." Prithu accordingly milked the earth. It is because of this that the earth is known as Prithvi. Prithu also leveled out the earth with his bow so that his subjects could live in the plains that created. The earth prospered during Prithu's rule. Poverty, disease, and sins were unknown. Everyone was virtuous. The solar line. The sage requested Lomaharshana, "Please tell us the history of the solar line." Lomaharshana compiled. Aditi and the sage Kashyapa had born the sun god Vishwavana or Surya. As a son, Surya had three wives, Samanjana, Ragini, and Prabha. Ranjana had a son named Revata, and Prabha had a son named Prabhata, morning. Surya and Samanjana had two sons and a daughter. The eldest son was Vaivasvata Manu, and the remaining two offspring were twins named Yama and Yamuna. The sun's radiance was, however, too much for Samanjana to bear. After a while, she could not bear it any longer. She therefore created a woman out of her own body. The woman looked exactly like Sanjana and was named Chaya. There was no way of telling the two apart. "Stay here and pretend to be me," said Sanjana. "Look after my husband and my children. No one will know the truth unless you tell them. As for me, I am going away." Surya did not realize that, and he took Chaya to be his wife. And Surya and Chaya had two sons and two daughters. The sons were Savarani Manu and Shani, and the daughters were Tapati and Vishishti. Chaya was clearly fond of her own children and neglected Samanjana's. This did not bother Vaivasvata Manu too much. He was the eldest and more collected and balanced. But Yama resented this favoritism of Chaya's. In a fit of petulance, he raised his foot to kick Chaya. Chaya cursed Yama. "I curse you that your foot may be devoured by worms," she said. "May it be infected with pus and blood." This alarmed Yama, and he rushed to his father. "My mother has cursed me," he told Surya. "I am only a child. Even if I did commit a sin, does a mother ever curse her children? I have serious misgivings that she is not our mother at all." When Surya taxed Chaya with this, she came out with the truth, and Surya learnt that Samanjana had left. Samanjana's father was Vishwakarma. The chariot of the gods, Surya went to his father-in-law to find out if he knew anything of Chaya's whereabouts. "Indeed I do," replied Vishwakarma. When Samjana left your house, she came to me in the form of a mare. But I refused to let her live in my house, since she had left her husband's house without seeking his permission. She is living at the moment in the desert, but Samjana did not want. She did because she could not bear to stand your energy and radiance. If you permit, I shall shave off some of the excess energy to that people can look at you. Vishwakarma shaved off some of the sun's energy. With the excess energy were constructed many of the weapons of the gods, such as Vishnu's chakra, Shiva's trident, and Indra's vajra. This made the sun's visage much more pleasant and bearable. The only parts of Surya's body that were not thus modified were the feet. No one can bear to look at Surya's feet, and it is forbidden to visualize the sun god's feet when one is praying to him. A person who does not follow this injunction is a sinner and is made to suffer from leprosy. Surya now went to look for Samjana and found her in the form of a mare. He too adopted the form of a horse and joined her. As horses, they had two sons. Since Ashwa means horse, the sons were known as Ashwanis. They became the physicians of the gods and were also known as Matsya and Dasra. After the Ashwins were born, Surya and Samjana gave up their forms of horses and returned to their usual forms. What do you think happened to Savarani Manu? He went away to perform tapasya on Mount Sumeru. He is destined to be one of the future Manus. Shani became a planet and Yamuna a river. As for Tapati, she too became a river. Yama had been cursed by Chaya that his feet would rot and be infected with worms. To mitigate the effects of the curse, Surya gave Yama a bird which ate up all the worms. Thereafter, Yama went to a tirtha named Gokarna and started to pray to Shiva. For thousands of years he prayed and eventually managed to please Shiva. Shiva granted Yama the boon that he would be the god of death. He would mete out punishments to sinners in accordance with the sins that they had committed. He would also keep account of the store of merit punya that righteous people accumulated. Vaivasanta Manu ruled as Manu. He had 10 sons. The eldest was named Ila. The other sons were named Ikshvaku, Kushanabha, Arishta, Drishta, Narishyanta, Karusha, Sharyati, Prishartha, and Nabha. The solar line owes its origin to Ikshvaku. In this line was born King Bhagiratha, who brought the sacred river Ganga down from heaven. Further down the line was Dasharatha, and Dasharatha's son was Rama. You know about Rama from the Ramayana. Ila and the lunar line. Vaivasanta Manu's eldest son was Ila. When Vaivasanta Manu became old, he retired to the forest. Ila was appointed the ruler in his place. Ila set out on a voyage of conquest and travelled throughout the world. There was a forest named Sharvana, frequented by Shiva and Parvati. Shiva had decreed that any man who entered the forest would become a woman. King Ila did not know about this rule and set foot in the forest, and inadvertently he immediately got transformed into a woman. What is going to happen to me now? Thought Ila. Where will I live? He even forgot all about his earlier life. The moon god Chandra had a son named Buddha. While Ila was wandering around, Buddha came upon her and fell in love with her. The two had a son named Pururva, and Pururva was the ancestor of the lunar line. Meanwhile, Ikshvaku and the other brothers had started to look for Ila. When they could find no trace of their brother, they asked the sage Vasishtha if he knew of Ila's whereabouts. Vasistha used his mental powers to find out what they had happened. He asked the prince to pray to Shiva and Parvati. That was the only way to make Eli a man once more. The prayers pleased Shiva and Parvati, and they found out what the princes want. But what you desire is quite impossible, they told Ikshvaku and his brother. Ela can never be made a man once again. At best, we will grant you the following boon. Ela will alternate between being a man for 1 month and a woman for 1 month. The princess had to be content with this. As a woman, Ela continued to be known as Ela. But as a man, he came to know as Sudhimna and had 3 sons named Utkala, Gaya and Harishwata, Daksha and Sati. I will now tell you about Daksha and Sati. Lomaharshana told the sages. Daksha had a daughter named Sati who was married to Shiva. Daksha did not like his son-in-law at all. When he organized a yajna, he did not invite Shiva to attend the ceremony. But Sati went to the ceremony. Although Shiva had not been invited, why did you not invite Shiva? Sati asked her father. Because your husband is undeserving of such honor, replied Daksha. He is not fit to be treated on par with the other gods. These words angered Sati. I am ashamed that I am your daughter, she said. Cursed am I that I have had to hear such abuses of great Shiva. I no longer wish to be your daughter. I will therefore give up this physical body and I owe to you by immolating myself. As for you, I curse you that you will be born on earth as the son of the 10 Prachetas. You will then try to perform an Ashwamedha Yajna, but Shiva will destroy the ceremony. Daksha tried to pacify Sati. Please have mercy on me, he said. You are the mother of the entire universe. How will the universe survive if you die? It is only through your good grace that you condensed to be born as my daughter. Please do not forsake me. What I have said cannot be neglected or negated, replied Sati, but I will grant you this much. When you are born on earth, you will continue to be devoted to me. Where will I pray to you? Asked Daksha. At what tirthas, and what are the names by which I will address you in the course of my prayer? Sati then told Daksha 108 of her names. She also told him the names of 108 tirthas at which she was known by these respective names. These names and tirthas are as follows, with the he naming being given first and the tirthas second. Visalakshi at Varanasi, Lingadharini at Naimisha, Lalita Devi at Prayaga, Kamakshi at Gandhamadana, Kumuda at Manasa, Vishwavakya at Ambara, Gomati at Gomanta, Kamacharini at Mandara, Mandorka at Chitraratha, Jayanti at Hastinapur, Gauri at Kanyakujva, Rambha at Malelocha, Kirtimati at Ekmara, Vishwa at Vishweshwara, Purushputa at Pushkara, Margadhyayini at Kedara, Nanda at Himalaya, Bhadra Renika at Gokarna, Bhavani at Staneshwara, Vilpa Patrika at Vilva, Madhavi at Srishaila, Bhadra at Bhadreshwari, Jaya at Varaha Stalai, Kamala at Kamalalaya, Rudrani at Rudrakoti, Kali at Kalanjara, Kapila at Mahalinga, Mukteshwari at Martakata, Mahadevi at Shalagrama, Janapriya at Shivalinga, Kumari at Mayapuri, Lalita at Sanatana, Utpalakshi at Sraksha, Mahatopala at Kamalaksha, Mangala at Gangatira, Vimala at Purushottama, Amokshi at Vipaksha, Patala at Pundravardhana, Narayani at Suparshva, Bhadrasundari at Vikuta, Vipula at Vipula, Kalyani at Malayalachana, Kotavari at Koti Tirtha, Sugandha at Mandavandana, Trisandhya at Goda Sharma, Ratipriya at Gangadwara, Shivananda at Shivakunda, Nandini at Devika Tata, Rukmani at Dwaravati, Radha at Vrindavan, Devaki at Mathura, Paramashwari at Patala, Sita at Chitrakuta, Vindhyavasini at Vindhya, Ekavaira at Sadhyadri, Chandrika at Harishchandra, Aroka at Vaidya Anta, Maheshwari at Mahakala, Abhaya at Ushan Tirtha, Amrita at Vidya Kandara, Mandhavi at Mandhyava, Swaha at Maheshwar Pura, Prachanda at Changalanda, Chandrika at Makaranda, Vararoha at Someshwara, Pushkaravati at Prabhasa, Devamata at Saraswati, Mata at Sagara, Mahabhaga at Mahalaya, Pingaleshwari at Payoshini, Simhika at Krita Socha, Yakshakari at Kartikeya, Loha at Uttavarata, Subhadra at Shohana Sanghama, Lakshmi Mata at Siddhapuram, Anjana at Bharata Sharma, Vishwamukhi at Jalandhara, Tara at Kishka Kindachala, Pushti at Deva Aruvana, Medha at Kashmir Mandala, Bhimadevi at Himachala, Pushti at Vishweshwara, Shuddhi at Kapalamochana, Sita at Maya Rovana, Dhavani at Kandakodhara, Dhriti at Pendara, Kala at Chandrabhagan, Shivakarni at Achodotira, Amrita at Vena, Urvashi at Vadrivana, Aushadhi at Uttakara, Kushodara at Kushadvipa, Manmata at Hemakuta, Sandhyavadani at Mukuta, Vanditya at Ashwatha, Nidhi at Kuberalaya, Gayatri at Vedantana, Parvati at Shiva Nidhana, Indrani at Devaloka, Saraswati at Brahmamukha, Prabha at Surya Ambhiva, Vaishnavi at Matrigana, Arundhati at Satimukha, Tilottama, Brahmakala, Shakti. Having recited these names, Sati immolated herself. She was later reborn as Parvati or Uma, the daughter of Menaka and Himalaya. She was remarried to Shiva. As for Daksha, he was born on earth as the son of the 10 Prachetas. Brahmadatta. There used to be a sage named Kaushika. Kaushika had 7 sons named Swasripa, Krodhana, Himsara, Vishnua, Kavi, Vagdhusta, and Pitrivarti. These sons all became disciples of sage Garga. After Kaushika died, there was a terrible drought on earth. Famine raged and people went hungry. Garga had asked his disciples to tend to his cattle, and the 7 brothers had taken the cattle to the forest so that they might browse on the grass that grew there. The brothers suffered so much from hunger that they decided to slay one of the cows and eat it. Killing a cow would be a sin, remarked the youngest. If we have to kill the cow, Let us at least perform its funeral ceremony. Perhaps that will reduce the severity of the sin that we are committing. The other brothers agreed to this. The funeral rites of the cow were observed. It was then killed and eaten. The brothers returned to Garga and told, a cow has been killed and eaten by a tiger. Garga saw no reason to disbelieve them. But the sin remained a sin, and as a consequence of having committed a crime, the brothers were born as hunters in their next lives. But they were born as Jatismaras, that is, they remembered the incidents of their earlier lives. Since the brothers remembered what they had been in their earlier lives, they saw no reason to live as hunters. They therefore fasted until they died. They were next reborn as deer, but the deer continued to be Jatismaras and fasted to death. The brothers were reborn as birds. Four of the brothers continued to be detached from material pursuits and spent their time in meditation. But the three remaining brothers were not so lucky. The king of Panchala had once come to the forest with his retinue. The king's name was Vibhraja. One of the birds was struck by the king's pomp and glory and wished to be born as a king in his next life. King Vibhraja and two ministers with him and all the soldiers seemed to be following the instructions of the ministers. Accordingly, two of the birds desired to be born as ministers in their next lives. The one who wished to be a king was born as Brahmadatta, king Vibharaja's son. The two who desired to be born as ministers became Pundarika and Suvalekha, the sons of the two ministers whom they had seen. The remaining three brothers were not attached to material pursuits and were born as Brahmans, the first of the four classes. Brahmadatta married Kalyani. You will never guess who Kayanti had been in her earlier life. She had been the cow whom the brothers had killed. What was most remarkable was the fact that Brahmadatta could understand the languages of all living beings. Brahmadatta and Kalyani were once taking a walk in their garden. Brahmadatta heard two ants conversing. Since he could understand the language of all living beings, he could follow what the ants were saying. Why are you angry with me? Asked the male ant. Why are you refusing to speak to me? Go away and do not pester me, replied the female ant. You say you love me very much, and yet when you got some grains of sugar yesterday, you gave them to another ant and not to me. I refuse to speak to you. That was my mistake, said the male ant. I thought that it was you to whom I was giving the grains of sugar. I will never make such a mistake in the future. Please pardon me and smile. I cannot bear to see you so angry. The ants made up. The conversation made Brahmadatta laugh. Kalyani naturally wanted to know why Brahmadatta was laughing, and the king reported the entire conversation to his wife. But Kalyani refused to believe her husband. How can any man understand the language of ants? She wanted to know. You are lying. You must have been laughing at me. Brahmadatta tried to convince his wife, but Kalyani could not and would not listen. The king did not know what to do. But while he was sleeping, he dreamt that Vishnu appeared before him and told him to wait till the next morning. Brahmadatta's mind would be set at rest then. 4 of the brothers had been born as Brahmins. They had been born as the sons of Brahmin named Sudaridra and were named Dhritatimana, Tattvadarshi, Vidyachanda and Taposuka. Since they were born as Jatishmaras, they remembered their earlier lives and had no desire to tie down by material pursuit. They wanted to retire to the forest and meditate. But Sudaridra tried to restrain his son. How can you do that? He asked. How can you retire to the forest to meditate? Your duty is to look after me in my old age. If you do not look after, I shall starve to death. Please do not commit that sin. You will not starve to death, replied his sons. Go to King Brahmadatta and ask him for wealth. He will give you gold and villages. Tell him to remember the sage Garga, the hunters, the deer, and the bird. The four sons went away to the forest. Sudarida came to meet the king. He met the king on the day following Brahmadatta's dream. Sudarita's words reminded Brahmadatta of what he had been in his earlier life. He was ashamed that he had forgotten those incidents and had become addicted to material pursuits. He decided to join his brothers in the forest. He gave Sudarita as much wealth as the Brahman wanted and handed over the kingdom to the prince, Vishwasena. The brothers Pundarika and Suvalaka also accompanied Brahmadatta to the forest. It was thus that the Kaushika's 7 sons eventually attained salvation. There is one thing we do not understand, said the sages. How came Brahmadatta to understand the language of all living beings? That is easily explained, replied Lomaharshana. King Vibraja had prayed to Vishnu that he might obtain such a son, and the boon was granted.